Hey there, Suzi here. Before we get into today's episode, I want to share this special message with you. Now, my co-host Michelle and I love masterminds. Not only do we belong to masterminds, but we also host a mastermind. We started it almost 8 years ago, and it is the premier mastermind for women business owners who want to grow their business with a specific focus on marketing. Now, this group is usually completely booked out, and very occasionally we open the doors and invite a handful of women in. So if you're growing your business, but you're struggling with feeling overwhelmed, or like you constantly have a split focus when it comes to your marketing, this could be exactly what you're looking for. We have an amazing time together, and the women in the group are extraordinary. They're great cheerleaders, supporters, advisors, and colleagues for you. And they're also seeing extraordinary results. We see people cracking the $1 million, $2 million, $3 million mark, launching new e-commerce sites that go from $0 to $10,000 a month in sales. They're doubling their conversion rates, they're growing memberships, they're selling courses, they're growing their personal brands, and they're getting all kinds of media exposure and speaking opportunities and so much more. You can learn more about the mastermind and join the wait list over at herbusinessmastermind.com. We're going to open the doors soon, so you definitely want to be on the list to get an invitation. So head on over to herbusinessmastermind.com. You're listening to the Content Sales Podcast, the show all about how to create content to attract, convert, and keep your ideal clients. Welcome to episode 199. I'm Suzi Dafnis, and here with me is my co-host, Michelle Falzon. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hi, Suzi. I'm doing really well. 199.
I know.
On the precipice. Amazing. Nearly 200 episodes. And we are going to be doing something quite special for our 200th episode. So we'll talk about that a bit later. But right now in today's show, we're talking about one of my favorite topics. So I'm really keen to dive in.
Yes, this is definitely a topic that's made a huge difference to not only our own marketing results at Her Business, but also to our masterminders. Now, Michelle and I run the Marketing Success Mastermind, and our masterminders who we've been working with really closely over the last year have been implementing this idea we're talking about today. And so listen up. We've seen amazing results. So you really want to double down on this. This is this idea of creating a runway for your marketing and how that runway can actually help you dramatically increase the results you get in terms of more sales and for less cost and less spinning your wheels and less a lot of the things that you don't want with your marketing. And I know when we became more conscious of building a runway into our marketing plans, we immediately saw better results. And it also makes marketing so much more fun because you really can build up some great momentum and engage your audience along the way when you're preparing to make your offers. So what is this runway we speak of? Michelle, maybe you could give a high-level answer to that.
Sure. And it really does make things more fun. You're so right. So your runway is all the activity you would do to promote your upcoming campaign, really kind of before you're overtly promoting it. So it's kind of everything from the very, very first time you might even hint at or make mention of what you're about to offer, all the way through to actually then, making the offer and making the sale. But the missing part of the runway is really this part we're going to focus on today, which is all the stuff you might do before you even begin overtly promoting your offer. So let me give you an example. Let's say you sell an online course and you have planned to offer that course 2 times a year. Let's say you've got a launch plan for that in April, and you're going to also offer it again in September. Now, normally someone might think, well, look, let's see, this April campaign for my online course, let me see, I want to start the course, say, mid-April. So I might begin my email marketing for that early in March. And okay, well, that's when I'm going to begin my campaign. But with this runway mindset, you realize there's kind of like a campaign before the campaign. That is, there's a whole bunch of things you can be doing to pave the way for your offer, for your marketing, even before you start actually overtly talking about your offer. So even though you're opening your course up in the middle of April and you plan to promote it with your emails and your Facebook ads and maybe running a webinar and all those things with that pre-launch kind of activity from, say, mid-March, you can actually think about starting your runway for that campaign way earlier in like January or February or even earlier. And in this runway time, we're sharing great content. We're building our audience. We're teaching people why they need to solve the problem that you help them solve. We're teaching them to get to know us and like us as the expert in this space. So think of it literally like a plane taking off. It needs that runway to get up the speed and the momentum for liftoff. If you had a very short runway on a plane, I wouldn't want to be on that plane. Let me just tell you. So it's the same with your marketing. When you can build that runway in, when you can give it more time and space to really gain momentum, and you're not starting from completely standstill start, you can have so much more impact and results with your marketing.
I love what you're saying. Like, as this episode goes to air, it's the end of November, and inside of the Her Business Network, and a big shout out to my beautiful Her Business Network members, all through November and all through December, we've been working on planning and really planning out their big picture plans for 2023, but then also drilling deeper into what are the campaigns, what are they going to sell, when are their promotions going to be? And so one of the things, for those of you who are listening, who are members, this is why we do it this far out, because building that runway in now is going to give you the run up to build that speed, to gather momentum, to really take off with your promotions in a way that you couldn't do if you did what Michelle said. If you had a really short runway and it's like a couple of weeks before you want to sell your course or your membership or that new e-commerce promotion, you're thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to start emailing and social posts and ads now. No, this is really a way to rethink it. And this runway is an idea that I first heard from my wonderful mentor, Stu McLaren of the Membership Experience. He is a master at creating really amazing runways to his launches. And he said this, he said, the longer the runway, the better the launch. Right. And so by launch, he means his promotion. So Stu launches around April each year for his Membership Experience, which is an online program. But you can see him in runway mode months beforehand. And something that we started doing as well, because before our big Her Business Network launches, which we typically do around March and September each year, is that we have several marketing stages. So we don't suddenly get to February and go, oh, okay, we're going to open the doors to membership next month. Let's start letting people sort of know that something's happening. We started with our runway much earlier, creating content that brings people into our world a few months before, not too far before, but a few months before, really gearing up our advertising spending, our social media presence, the messaging and what we're talking about, bringing in new leads, activating existing prospects who might be in our group or on our email list, and then moving into our pre-launch marketing. So this is the period just before we actually open the doors to membership. And during this pre-launch marketing period, we run typically some sort of event. It could be a webinar, it could be a week-long challenge like our Get New Clients Coaching Week or our Find Your Focus 5-day challenge. And then once we're through that period, which is typically about a week out from when you can actually join the network, we move into our launch phase where we open up the membership, usually only for 3 or 4 days, to allow women to actually join our Her Business network. So what we're getting better and better at, and what we're hoping you'll get better and better at, is recognizing that you are always in some part of the runway. And it's about knowing that you want to give yourself more time. You want to work out what your runways are to the different offers you have, because maybe like we have a runway up to our mastermind when we open the doors to mastermind. We have a runway up to our network, as I just mentioned, twice a year. We have a runway up to our Reach Retreat. And we don't want to be tripping over ourselves and exhausting ourselves and depleting our resources. We want to make sure that we've got this all planned out and that anything that's important to us has a generous runway.
Runways.
A generous runway.
I love it. Yeah, a generous runway, because think about all that speed, all that momentum. And that is when the marketing does become more fun. It's a kind of a byproduct because all the momentum, the excitement, the anticipation, it's kind of infectious. So I love that language too, Suzi, that you're using about launch and pre-launch. So just while we're kind of using some of this language, and of course it doesn't have to be an official launch following any of the launch frameworks, although there are many great ones, and one in particular I'll mention in a moment, but just this idea that there's a date in the future where something's going to be available for sale, or there's a campaign you're going to launch for something that you have for sale all the time, but you're going to put it on special, you're going to do this special bonus, or it's Black Friday or whatever's going on, it's helpful to think of there's the launch and then there's the pre-launch activity you're going to do, which is, sending your emails, creating your wait list, all that sort of thing. And then there's this pre-launch, this runway period that's often forgotten. So we're pretty good at remembering I've got to set a date for my campaign. We're pretty good at remembering there's a few things I have to do just before that to build some buzz. But there's this pre-launch period that we want to really get you aware of. And this is the piece that is making all the difference. So let's just say, get back to our course that you're going to launch in April. You're going to launch it in April. You're going to do your pre-launch for that. Maybe, with your marketing, you're going to get your emails going. You're going to start opening up the opportunity for people to buy in March. But you've heard from Suzi and Michelle about this thing called the Runway, where you actually probably could start with that pre-launch marketing in January. So hang on a minute. If I'm selling my thing in April, I'm going to do some pre-launch buzz building in March. What the heck am I saying from January to March? Because you can't just say, buy my thing for 4 months. Hey, I'm doing a course. It's not open till April. You're going to love it. That does not go down so well. It's not interesting. And plus, you kind of burn people out. It's the worst thing to do, because when you finally have the course available, people are so bored and tuned out that they don't buy. So that is what we're not saying you do. That's what we're not talking about doing. So what do we do instead in this pre-launch period before we're really overtly marketing our offer? And this is when I want to refer to Jeff Walker. He is the creator of the product launch formula, which is a very specific way to launch. I can highly recommend his book, Launch. I know if you are a Her Business Network member, Suzi has very generously gifted her book club. All the Her Business Network members got a copy of this book a little while ago. And Jeff says, how can I let people know something is coming without having it feel like I'm trying to sell them something? That is the question that he asks himself in this pre-launch period, when he's planning out what is he going to share in that pre-launch timeframe on his runway. So in the example I'm using of the course that's available in April, we're doing the pre-launch in March, but we're going to start this pre-launch in January. What can we do between January and March to let people know something is coming without having it feel like I'm trying to sell them something? Now, some of the things that you can do just generically, and we'll give you a few examples in a minute, is tease curiosity. So, let people know, that there might even be something coming. Get them curious, tease them a little bit. Maybe you could even get their help creating the product. How might you enlist them into providing you some content or some feedback or answering a poll and those kinds of things? Maybe the content sharing in launch period is specifically designed to address some objections that people have to what it is you sell. And you're just kind of putting out some great educational content or sharing some customer stories that just kind of speak to the problem generically and how to overcome that problem or that objection generically without mentioning your product. Maybe you can just be engaging in more conversation. Like Suzi said, she's enlivening her groups in that period of time. She's getting more active in those places and spaces, and she's making it fun and building anticipation. What can you be doing in that pre-launch period that makes you stand out and makes you appear different? Maybe there's something really fun and cool you can do on your social media threads. I mean, for some people that's dancing. That's not always for everybody. But what is your thing that's going to make you stand out and be different? Maybe you've got a really interesting take on something. So use this time as well during the pre-launch to figure out what people want. How might you engage with your audience in a way where you ask questions, you test ideas, you test hooks, you do surveys and things like that, where you're using this pre-launch to make your pre-launch stronger and your product stronger.
Ooh, I love all those tips. The key is to think of your runway as this lead up into your campaign. And when I use the word campaign, I mean your promotion, whatever that is, because this runway paves the way so that by the time you're actually saying, you can now buy my thing and making your offer, people are really ready to buy. They know you, they trust you, you've got their attention, they know what you do, who you help, that you've helped others like them, and that you can help them. And it makes the sale so much easier and feels like the natural next step, because you're not going from cold to making an offer. You've warmed them up through teasing curiosity, through handling objections, through doing all those things that Michelle just took us through.
Yeah, this point you make about these cold starts, I think when people plot out their marketing calendar, and I know even, in years past, I've been guilty of this. It's like, right, well, I'll just fit in the pre-launch here and the launch here, and then I'll back straight up with the next pre-launch for the next thing, right? And so I'm expecting in just a few weeks for people to go from really not knowing about this topic that I'm speaking about, or not being too interested in it, to not only knowing about it and being interested in it, but being prepared to part with money for it. So very often people start with a cold start and they don't allow enough time and space to get into momentum before they start making their offer. And Suzi used that phrase of warming people up. So, we want people to go from cold, not knowing nothing, to hot. Hey, quick, how do I give you my money? And one way that we used to explain this to our masterminders was to talk about the hotness of chilies. So there's actually a scale called the Scoville scale that actually ranks how hot a chili is. And at the very low end, where it's not very hot at all, you've got something like a bell pepper or a capsicum, something like that. And on the very far right of that scale, the hottest of the hot, you've got things like the Carolina Reaper, which, true to its name, I think you feel like you really do want to die when you've taken one of these chilies, right? But your eyes start watering, you really know that you've taken something hot into your system. Now, we don't want our clients' eyes to water, but the idea is that when we're marketing on our runway, we start with the capsicum and the bell pepper. We're being a little more general and generic, and we know our audience is cold and they might need some basic fundamental information and ideas and to be kind of taken on a journey. But as that runway moves along, as the plane gains speed, if you like, we can put a bit more spiciness into our content. We can start to get a little more overt. We can start to know that they know us now and like us now and trust us now. So we can say a few more contentious things, or we can start to seed that something is coming, and we can start to tease that something is coming, and we can ask for more interaction. And then we can say, and here it is. And then now here it is. And here's the reasons why you want to buy it. And suddenly it's the doors are closing. Hurry up and buy now. And you can see how we've gone from cold to really, really hot.
And as we mentioned, this is an idea that we've embedded very much into our Marketing Success Mastermind. And having seen women use this runway idea from year to year, going from very short runways where, the plane's going to topple over, to actually extending the runway, really knowing what part of the runway they're in, identifying when they're in pre-launch, knowing that they're in pre-launch, knowing when they're in launch. And again, I'm using terminology that is best explained by reading the book Launch, which we might just put a link to that in our show notes as well. What we've seen is people double and triple their results because they're giving themselves the chance. They're not tripping over themselves trying to get something out the door and scrambling to get the money in without doing the work. The leverage that the runway provides is that it allows you to amplify your results, but it takes thinking about it earlier and really building in that time. And to help you really move forward with this idea, we've actually got a handout for you that goes with this episode that you can download absolutely free. And I'm going to tell you how to get that in a moment. And in this handout, we share 14 ideas that you can include in your own successful runway for your next promotion. And I thought we'd touch on just a few of those here now. And of course, you can then download the handout, and I'll tell you where to get that in a moment. So a couple of the things that you'll see in the download is this idea of surveys. So very early on in the runway, doing some sort of survey, it doesn't have to be overly complex, that gives you your customer's language. Because when people ask a question, it's not a yes, no, multiple choice question, but when you're actually allowing people to, in their words, answer a question or a couple of questions, it gives you the customer's language. And when we can use our customers' language in our marketing, it is so much better than any marketing blah, blah that we write ourselves. They really define their pain points in a way that others like them will associate with. And this was such a switch when we started to do this. And their language is everywhere. So surveys is the first thing there. And you will learn not only what they want, but what they don't want. You'll also get ideas not only for your marketing, but also for future product and service development once you do a survey. Michelle, your thoughts?
I love surveys. And for all the reasons you've just said, and also one really good little tactic when you're launching your survey is it can be the very earliest seed that something is coming. So you can say, hey, I've noticed a lot of people have had a challenge with, cutting carbs out of their diet. If you help someone that helps somebody with their diet. And I'm thinking about creating a product or a course or whatever it is around how you can do this. And I'd just love to know your thoughts. Can you answer this question for me, or can you take this quick survey? So now it's just that subtle, hey, something's on the horizon. Something's brewing over here. So it's just a nice little early, soft mention that something's coming.
And what you're doing there is seeding. And we actually have an episode on seeding. And this is this idea of dropping a seed that just gets someone goes, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. And a survey can definitely do that. But we love surveys anytime, even if we're doing the same promotion from year to year, we will often kick off with some sort of survey that seeds what's going to happen, but also gives us fresh, new customer language. So that's number one. The next thing I want to talk about is case studies. So in your runway, you can definitely share videos, emails that include case studies, social posts that show customer stories and case studies early in your runway. And at that point, you don't even have to be overt at all about, you're not asking anyone to buy anything. You're just sharing the story of that particular customer who used your product or service and had this amazing win. And just in the last episode, we talked about 5 different ways to use your customer stories and case studies. So if you haven't caught episode 198, you definitely want to check that out. And so you can share case studies, as I said, with videos, emails, social posts. You could also go live or do pre-recorded interviews with people who've used your products and services. And again, in those interviews, you're going to be telling their customer story, but you're not yet selling your thing. But this is all part of your runway. You're showing people evidence. One, they're going to get to know, like, and trust you because they're seeing you, they're hearing you. They're going to see that people like them use your products and services. And it's a great way to have people engage with you and start to think about you and the problem that you solve. It's also a great way to build incredible advocacy within your best customers who will love telling their story and who will lift you up as you share their story, which makes great for everyone else who's not even necessarily thinking of buying, but it just builds your authority. It builds your likeness. So definitely use case stories.
Yeah. And I want to pick up on something really important you said there, which is that, early on in the runway, when you're at the bell pepper stage or, you're at some of the less spicy stages of the runway. Yeah. You're not kind of saying, and so when you bought my XYZ product, tell me how great it was. That's not what you're doing at that point. You might be doing that later when you're right at the point where, hey, the doors are about to close and, you can be more overt. You're at the hot and spicy end of your campaign. But at the start of the runway, which is the part that we feel most people miss and don't plan enough for and to kind of have a bit of a blind spot around, you want to take an educational approach, even with your case studies. So you're just showing them, hey, this is a person that was struggling with an issue just like you might have right now, and here's how they solved it. And so the thing that helps me is I try and think about how can I solve the problem, or how can I speak about the solution to the problem in a more generic way, in a less specific way to say my specific product, but just what my product does. And to give you an example of that, Suzi mentioned our good friend and mentor, Stu McLaren. And so in his pre-launch, he sells a product that's all about learning how to build a membership. Now, in his early stages of the runway, he's not so much, even with his case study and client interviews, talking overtly about memberships, although they do come up. He's really talking about this idea of recurring revenue and how important it is to have recurring revenue in your business. So he's solving the problem generically. He's getting people used to this idea, this concept of recurring revenue, and how great it is to make a sale once and then have that sale happen over and over again. And people go, I really love this idea. And then he'll interview the school teacher who got recurring revenue by creating this membership site where she offered teachers a way to get regular teacher resources. So the thing you're selling is sort of like you don't necessarily overtly over the top lead with it. And that's the same for your case studies, but with a lot of your content that you're sharing in that early runway stage. Another really good piece of content that you can share in the early stages as well, perhaps as you've started seeding, things are warming up just a tiny little bit, you might share some behind the scenes content. Now, this could be videos of you filming the course that you're going to release. And you might not even say what the course is yet, but you might say, hey, I've been in the studio today, something great's coming. It could be photos of that. It could be a story you tell about, oh my gosh, I was driving to the studio. We're doing something really cool. I'll tell you more about that later. But on the way, blah, 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 and you tell a little story. It could be something funny that happened, like you might be actually developing a physical product and, the box arrived and it was way bigger than you thought it was going to be. And somebody filmed you with the surprise look on your face. It could be something that makes people go, oh, wow, like you've got this list of 50 resources. And you say, I'm putting all of these resources into my new program. And they look at this big list and they go, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing.
Oh, I love all those tips and I love behind the scenes. And you might think, well, I don't have a product-based business, but you do not need one. Like this is just you showing your work, showing your process. Another thing, and again, this is all going to be in the download, is asking questions. And you want to do this at every part of your runway. So just say I was promoting the network and I might say, are you a heck yes for networking? Or you're an absolutely no, I'd rather be home in my Ugg boots, Give me an answer to that question. Or it could be, hey, I've just designed the logo. I just got back the logo from our designer for my new XYZ that you're creating. Which logo do you like? Which colors do you like? So you're not saying buy anything, but you're bringing them into this process by asking a question. Or you could ask something like, what's the one thing, and it's going to be something relevant to what you do. So say you had a program on nutrition. It could be, what's one thing that when you eat gives you energy? Now, you're just doing it to engage people. You're learning a little bit of information. It's going to be a little bit of market research, but it's just a way, again, to bring people into your world. Or going back to, this is kind of behind the scenes, it could be, who can guess what this is? Or who can guess where I am right now? Or who can guess what I'm doing right here? It could also be just digging a little further and asking a question like, what does X mean to you? Now, X could be, back to my network example, what does networking mean to you? Or what does good customer service mean to you? Or what do difficult conversations mean to you? Or what does eating a healthy diet mean to you? Or whatever the topic is that you're going to be communicating about, asking questions to induce, like to bring out from everyone their thoughts, but more so to seed and engage what you're doing. Anything you want to add to that, Michelle?
Yeah, it's this conversation that you are beginning. And if you just bring this back to any other human interaction, I think sometimes people just think marketing is this weird science that is kind of different to how we relate to each other and any other human interaction platform there is. And it's not. If somebody was just, when you first meet somebody, you kind of ask them, well, how are you and where do you live? And you ask them a few questions and you begin the process. Now, that could very quickly turn into you guys cacking, laughing at the bar, or inviting each other over for dinner, or having a deep and meaningful conversation, or having them take some sort of action where they book in a holiday with you, or any of those things down the line. But it begins with you being interested in them and you inviting them to interact with you. And that's exactly what's happening at the start of your runway. Don't be in a rush to say, I've got this course, hurry up and buy it. Because that's not how it works in the real world when you're talking to real people as a real human. And guess what? That's all we're doing with our marketing.
And you can hear just from the examples we've given you already that in order to include some of these things in your runway, you're going to need to allow yourself a little bit of time. So
exactly.
Another thing that you want to include in your runway is a way to bust myths or overcome objections that people might have. Now, this is a really great way to rally people around you, especially if you're willing to share something that's a little contentious, something that really goes against the grain. And I remember many years ago when I had a business partnership with Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, one of the things he used to say that used to rile people up was your house is not an asset. Now, we've grown up with this idea that your house is your biggest asset, but he would make that statement and then he would have people discuss, why was it an asset? And then he would present his contentious idea. And I won't go into the why. You could read his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, for that. But it would just spark an idea. And many of us aren't willing to be contentious, but know that this, if you're willing to, if there's something you truly believe in, then I would introduce that. And this is a way for you to stand out. It also allows you to tackle something that you feel that you can have a healthy rant about, not to create chaos, but rather to get people to see that your unique point of view is valuable. So, for example, when I talk about networking and how I don't like networking, I even use the word hate with regards to networking, that I have an amazing network. And that it's really not done very well at most events that I've ever been to. Networking is terrible at most events where you're exchanging business cards and shoving them in each other's faces and who, gets the most cards wins. Because for me, creating a network is more about connection and making quality connections, and I don't need a lot of them over traditional networking. So this gives me a chance to talk about how we said goodbye to the old traditional way of networking a long, 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 long time ago, when I, with her business, and I introduced them to our 3 connection moves. These are 3 ways to get known, liked, and trusted and do business with people in any network that you're a part of. And there are moves which are showing up, lifting up, and speaking up. And then I can teach that piece of content. And usually it's such a light bulb for people who are like, oh, that doesn't feel sleazy or icky at all. I'm introverted and I could still do that. And people who resonate with that messaging, which is against the grain, are going to resonate more with me and be drawn to me into the Her Business Network. And those who are not, those who are really transactional or don't think that they can build a business by flying solo and not being connected, they're going to tune me out. And that is okay because they're not my ideal clients. We want to keep leaning into what we really believe in and handling those objections, but really finding the people that will come with us along the runway because they also believe what we believe. And you've busted the myths that were out there. And we'll talk a little more about beliefs later on.
Yeah, I love that. And to pick up on the point you said, I hope you're starting to see, I need a bit of time to season my audience, to warm them up with these, to really treat them with respect and to put more into that front end of the conversation that I'm having with my market. And that is such a good example to really, bust the myths, to come head on at an objection, to be contentious. I absolutely loved that example. And another thing you can do in addition to that is to do this idea of the teaser. Now, I mentioned it earlier as kind of the big picture, one of the big picture ways that you can be thinking about this early part of your runway. But I want to give you a couple of examples. So you can show a sneak peek of something. And we had Skye Anderton of Ruby Olive, who we actually just had on the show just recently in episode 197, how video storytelling grew my e-commerce business. And Skye had a great example of that this week. I follow her on the socials, and she just did a great job of this on a reel I saw this week. Now, she's got a launch coming up in the future, and she had this great montage reel of all these people having fun wearing her products. But in the middle of the video, she edited in a brand new product that she's not mentioned before, that, very few people know is coming. And in her copy that went along with the reel, she said, who can guess what the sneaky reveal was in this video? Which is genius because now people are like replaying the video, watching the video, trying to find out, oh, well, I know that product. Oh, that was the sneaky reveal. And then people are commenting. So she's got this fantastic engagement and fun that's happening. And like Suzi said earlier, it takes that forethought. It takes realizing I've got to make space for this stuff in my runway. So do check out that interview with Skye, episode 197. She's an absolute genius. So one way is the sneak peek of something, building people's curiosity, dropping an example or an image into something and saying, hey, who noticed the sneak peek? You can be more overt and say, look, I'm just going to show you something obscure from the project. Like you might let's say you're releasing a new book, and you might just show like the very top right-hand corner of a page, and you might say there's something really awesome coming. Or maybe you've seen this where people get the arrival of their book. They get the copy of the book arriving in a box and they film themselves unboxing it for the first time, but then they cut just before they reveal the cover of the book. And so it's like, oh, they know people know something's coming. You're teasing me. I want to know more. You're creating this open loop with people. So just think about, how can I tease what's coming? At the very front end of the runway, there might be very soft little teasers, but as you get closer and closer, that teasing can really build up. So it's revealing the whole thing, but not quite. So that's teasers. Another thing is, and again, all of this is in the download. If you're driving along thinking, how do I take notes of all this? Don't worry, just grab the download. It's all there for you. Another thing to think about is doing some live or spontaneous Q&A sessions where you just go live and you say, hey, we shared our customer story last week about XYZ, just the generic topic. Let's say it's recurring revenue if we're Stu McLaren, and a whole bunch of people ask questions. I'm just going to go live right now and answer whatever questions you have about recurring revenue. Now, this is just adding value at the beginning of the runway, and you might just be seeding or teasing that you've got a product and that membership's great for that, or telling some customer stories, but you're just adding value. You're answering questions. You're taking up mind share so that people think, hey, that Suzi lady, she's really great. I love what she said about networking. Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about maybe being able to network that way. Interesting. And then the next time you post, they've got a little bit more receptivity to what you're saying, and then a little bit more and a little bit more. And that's what builds the momentum.
I love that one. My gosh, there's so many thoughts going through my head. I just wanted, just before I go to our next point, I just wanted to say, just yesterday, I had the wonderful privilege of working with 60 business owners specifically to start to work on their goals, their big picture goals for 2023. And there's so many of them who they want to build an online course, they want to start a membership. And what Michelle and I know for sure, whether you're part of the network or not, is if you have a goal to do something major like that, introduce something major like that into your business next year, please take on board this runway idea, because we have seen too many cases, luckily not inside of our mastermind, because our masterminders know about runways, where people will create this beautiful thing. They'll put their time and energy, their thoughts, their intellectual property, their money into something, and then they put it out in the market, and they have this very short or non-existent runway where they go, okay, I've added it to my website and nobody bought, or I sent out 5 emails and nobody bought, or I did a free challenge and nobody bought. And the missing piece is this runway. If there's one thing that you do differently next year, no matter what your goals are, it would be to take on board this idea. So I wanted to have that little rant before I tell you
a healthy rant.
A healthy rant. I'm going to give you one more piece, and again, it's expanded on inside of the handout that we're giving you, and that is about human connection. And no matter what you sell, whether you sell business to consumer, whether you sell business to business, we are always dealing with humans with feelings, with issues, with challenges, with busy days, with all the things that we have going on as humans. And ultimately, we're going to buy from people that we can connect with. So human connection is another part of your runway. How can you connect? And I know there's days where I feel like I do not want to connect. I just want people to find that buy button and click. But here's the truth. Your story matters. Your story is something that will convince other people to say yes to you. Your values and your beliefs. Any business that I do business with, who's behind the business, that matters. And more consumers care about where their food comes from, who people really are. What are your values and beliefs? And so you can share those without sharing. You don't have to share deep personal stories if you don't want to, but there are lessons that you have learned, things that have led you to where you are today that you could be sharing a little bit of part of. Some of that, for those of you who have communities, you're building memberships or you have community-based businesses, what are the values behind your business, behind your community? Like, we're very much about collaboration over competition, and we encourage healthy collaboration, and we look down on competition because you can be one of 100 copywriters inside of our membership and there's plenty of business for all of you. So we really demonstrate our values in our runway. Your ideas, anything that you consider important, that is a way for you to connect. So you don't have to connect about everything, but there might be a few things that you choose to talk about. Some people will say, well, I'm always, I'm going to talk about my dog because I really love my dog, Kona. I have a dog called Kona. And so I'm going to include some things about Kona in my runway and make them relevant, or some things about my partner, PJ, or my love of travel, or whatever those things are that are connection points that other people will connect with, that you feel authentically that you can talk about and make relevant. Not to say buy my thing, but just to say, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is what I will rant about. This is what I will fight for. Then you want to share that. And I know that it can be hard because it takes showing up, right? It takes using one of our connection moves of showing up and speaking up. But that is just another element that I would love you to think about as you think about your runway. Anything you want to add, Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, it's wisdom right there. I mean, even if that's the only thing you take out of this episode, just the more of you that you can put into marketing. And like Suzi said, that doesn't mean you have to share everything about your life. You can choose a handful of things that you want to share about. And we had Tracy Harris on many episodes ago talking about Instagram and what you share on Instagram. She had a great suggestion that you just pick 5 things. Like she shares about the healthy food bowls she likes to eat. She dances. She does, a couple of other things. So you can choose. It's not about being an open book to everybody and sharing everything, but showing up, really authentically showing up cuts through the noise. And whether it's at the beginning of your runway, the middle of your runway, the end of your runway, after somebody's bought from you, after somebody has said they want a refund from you, like at every single point in your communications with your audience, with your team, the more you can be authentic, the more you can show up and share your values, the better.
Well said. So as we've mentioned a couple of times, we have put together a handout with these ideas and several more that we haven't covered here on the show. And you can find those over on our website at herbusiness.com/runway. That's herbusiness.com/runway.
So, Suzi, one of the excellent things I just want to touch on is a couple of the byproducts of the runway strategy. And so definitely everybody go grab that download, get that full list of things, start figuring out how you're going to do those things in your runway. And here's something else that I hope will incentivize you to really embrace the runway. This byproduct is that it suddenly gives you a reason for all the content that you're sharing. And I love it when this light bulb goes on for people because, we're taught we've got to do this many social posts and we've got to do this and we've got to do that and we've got to do reels, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. And so often I see people just sort of just creating content for the sake of it because they can tick a box and say, well, that's today's newsletter out and that's today's social post done. But there's no real strategy behind it. And that's not a criticism. It's actually kind of hard to do that when you don't have a reason for your content, when you don't kind of know why where or how it fits. And if you've been a long-term listener to the show, you'll know one of my big mantras is no content without conversion. And what that means is every piece of content doesn't have to be asking for the sale.
Right.
But every single piece of content needs to know what its conversion job is. Am I here right now providing this rant on this very specific topic because I know this is the topic I need to change people's minds on, so that in another week when I open card on my networking course that's different to the way everybody else does networking, they're going to want to buy it. So knowing the conversion job of every single piece of your content makes every piece of content relevant. It also shows you what you don't need to be doing. So you can cut a whole heap of stuff out that's irrelevant. You no longer feel like you're throwing spaghetti at the wall. You know the game you're playing. And we see this time and time again with people that we kind of take through this process. And our masterminders have got so good at this. They really know why they're interviewing that client and sharing it, why they're sharing that sneak peek of that content, why they're teasing this particular idea, why they're coming out with this list of 5 resources that are going to help people get used to this concept that they're sharing. So you're either in the middle of a launch, like in the middle of a campaign, in the middle of a promotion, sending your emails, asking people to come to your webinar, join your course, whatever it is, or you're in runway for that campaign. So if you've got something that's 6 months away, where is the runway for that? Where is the content that's relevant for that?
Absolutely. And another byproduct, which is very much related to what you just said, that I think is huge, is that when you plot out the runway and you see it as a vital part of your marketing calendar, when you see your campaigns over the year with the runway built in, so not just the date that the course starts or the in-store promotion happens or that new product is released, but that you see that runway, you can very often see that you have too many things in your marketing calendar. More often than not, that's the case in our experience. And it can suddenly become clear as to why you're feeling stressed and exhausted, putting so much into running lots of campaigns that aren't working. Whereas if you gave yourself the runway, you might have a different result. So Angela Council in our mastermind, who is the menopause coach I mentioned earlier, she really embraced this runway. She now does fewer launches of her course a year, and she's making a lot more money, like a lot more money. And she's loving life. She's no longer stressed. She hit the six-figure mark in her business with ease, as opposed to the last six-figure business she had, which stressed her out and was less profitable. And so she knows that if she gives herself that runway and she uses another principle that we've talked about here on the show, which is about rinsing and repeating, then she can go on her multi-day hikes. She can leverage the runway because she knows when she needs to be focused on the runway and when she doesn't, and what part of the runway she's in and what activity is happening. There's so much. This topic obviously goes much deeper than we've covered here today, but I do hope that this introduction to the idea and adding the runway to your marketing campaigns has inspired you to think about what you can do to create more momentum for your marketing by really building in your runway. So you definitely want to grab the download from today's show and start planning in some of those runway activities into your calendar. And once again, you're going to find that handout at www.herbusiness.com/runway. Right, so go get it. Now, we love this topic. As I'm sure you can tell, we love to share these tips on the show with as many business owners as possible. So if you enjoyed today's episode or any episode 199, then please go ahead and leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. We have over 100 5-star ratings at the moment. So thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure also to subscribe, because coming up, and in a moment, give you a little sneak peek. It's from the Doggy Bakery, who made this comment about the show. She said, if you haven't listened to Content Sells Podcast with Suzi and Michelle, episode 190, please, and she's got about 10 E's in that, please do it. She said, another piece of gold as they interviewed Thomas. So Kylie was really excited to read Denise's books, and then she was thrilled to hear the interview on the show. And so that was a couple of episodes ago, episode 190. So it was 9 episodes ago. That is the wonderful Denise Duffield-Thomas, the author of new book, Chill and Prosper. She's a money mindset mentor and incredible business owner. And thank you, Kylie Marks, for the shout out for not only that episode, but for the show. So we've mentioned a few other resources and past episodes and things here on the show. So we're going to put the links to all those things over on our show notes page, which is the same page you're going to pick up your bonus handout, and that's at herbusiness.com/runway. So coming up, as I teased, is episode 200. And Michelle, we're doing something a little bit, tease the tease. The tease?
Oh my gosh, we're going to tease the tease. This is getting meta now. So yeah, there is something really special coming up. As we said at the start of the show, this is episode 199. We are on the precipice of our 200th show. And so we were thinking, what could we do that would be kind of special, that would mark this occasion? I know for me personally, this has been such a joy and a privilege to work on this show for 200 episodes. We've talked to some amazing people. And of course, anytime I get to work with the amazing Suzi Dafnis is wonderful. So we thought we might do a live episode. Dun, dun, dun. Our first ever live episode. And so that will be a live episode. It'll be a bit of a retrospective. It is also going to include some Q&A. So feel free to ask us questions. Now, that is going to happen on the 13th of December. Now, if you are not already a member of the Content Sells Facebook page, if you haven't already gone over and liked that, definitely do that. Just look for Content Sells Podcast on Facebook, because we will be sharing all the details there. You also, when you download today's handout, if you're not already on the Her Business email list. When you download today's handout and put your email address in, that will ensure you'll also get some updates and details about that live session and how you can access.
Absolutely. So that is coming up on the 13th of December. Be sure, as Michelle said, to watch out for details on the Content Sells Podcast Facebook page. If you just look for Content Sells Podcast, you'll find it. And be sure to subscribe to the show to take a listen to that episode as well if you're catching this a little later. Michelle, anything you want to say before we go?
Look, this has been an introduction to the runway. Like Suzi said, there's so much we could talk about. I have a feeling there's going to be a few more shows that dig into aspects of this. But what we've given you today is all you need to grab this concept, run with it, and get started on the runway, baby.
We want to thank you so much for listening. We really do love putting this show together for you. We'll see you next time right here on the Content Sells Podcast. Bye for now.